welcome to the podcast, Wait, What Do You Do Again? Where we talk to everyday people doing amazing things. I'm your host, Megan DeFord. Let's go. Today we're speaking with Heather Wethington, CEO and founder of Wethington Engineering. Enjoy. Heather, thank you so much for being here today. I am really excited to talk to you. And you are a structural engineer. What does that mean? I feel like I should know what it means, but what does that actually mean?
Yeah, Megan, you are not alone. And thank you so much for having me here with you today. I'm so excited to be able to talk to people about things like what is a structural engineer and what do they do? So my specialty is residential structural engineering. So I partner up with an architectural team, with a homeowner, whether you are building your dream home or adding on to your existing home, or maybe building an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit for an income property or maybe for a family member. So I'm part of that design team that helps you get your building permit.
Okay.
And I am also there to provide support during construction, especially since I do a lot of remodel work. Once you take off the drywall and go, oh, that's an interesting way to frame that. Okay, let's move on here with what we've got and we'll find a solution. So in that process of designing your dream home, then you work with an architect to come up with things like the floor plan, what rooms you want where, what sizes. They work with you to make sure you have enough windows and lighting and that the flow through your house is comfortable and what you're looking for. And they do lots of other amazing things. And then I get the project, and it's my team's job to make sure that your building is safe and secure and resilient during things like earthquakes and high wind.
Yeah.
Events. So we use building codes to instruct us with, different guidelines on like forces we need to design for and things like that. And we work our magic and give you things like what size of framing you need and what kind of shear walls you need, what kind of foundation you need. And then our information gets put into the plan package and it goes to your city or your county building department and you get a building permit. So in a nutshell, it's kind of my job.
So architects design it, you make sure it
Yes.
stands up.
Yes.
It's like the super
Yes.
short answer.
That is it. Yes.
So how did you come to this? Have you always been fascinated by engineering or housing, or how did you come to this
Okay.
industry?
That is a great question. So as a kid, I was that nerdy girl who always had her nose in a book and loved math and science. And when I got into high school, the elective that I took was drafting. And I loved it, right? And we started off with, like more mechanically oriented technical drafting. And I took it so many years in a row that eventually my teacher was like, okay, the only thing I have left for you is start drawing some floor plans, right? Like, I'll give you an example. You learn how to draft it. I was like, that's amazing. I love it. He was fantastic. And actually, he was really instrumental in driving me into the field. He pulled me aside one day. I was probably a junior, and he was like, hey, so I know you're really good at math and science, and you seem to be loving doing these architectural plans. I think you should go to Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo and study architectural engineering because you learn a little architecture, you learn a little engineering, you're super valuable to a small firm. And as a very shy introvert, working for a small firm sounded amazing to me. So I was like, that's great, I'll go do that. This is like back in the late 1980s. So I applied to Cal Poly and I got in, right? It's not like today where kids are applying to 12 colleges and getting accepted to their, not their A school or their B school, but the G school
Oh, yeah,
was not like that at
it is a
all.
different time, yeah.
So, yeah, so I moved 3 hours up the coast and went to Cal Poly and started this degree. And it's designed as a 4-year program. It took me 6 years and a quarter to
Right,
work through it.
yeah.
The coursework is super challenging. Um, and I distinctly remember probably about my third year in walking up the hill on campus, going from one class to another, thinking, "What am I doing here? What did I get myself into? What's going on?" Like, I could do anything. Maybe I'll switch to English or history or something that is
Right.
easier than this. And I realized I'm like, I just finished all of my calculus and all of my physics. Like, I don't want to throw that away. So I guess I'm just going to put my head down and keep going.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what I did. I kept my head down and I kept going, and I got my bachelor's degree and astoundingly found a firm like 3 blocks from my house
Wow.
that I started working at just a couple months after I graduated. So that was a super fun adventure. It was a really small firm, family owned business. And aside from the owner, there was one other engineer on staff when he hired me. And yeah, it was the start of an amazing career. And a lot of his work was residential. So that is like really what my passion is.
Yeah.
I love, love, love working with homeowners to make their lives better.
That's amazing. So I was an English major, and I will tell you, I had days when I was doing like a 40-page paper where I wish I was an engineer. So I think you always want what you don't have, right? Um, and
Absolutely. Yes.
I'm glad you stuck it out. So this may be a dumb question. Is there a difference when you're learning, when you're getting your undergrad or
Hmm.
master's? Is there a difference between the principles of residential and commercial, or is it all the same principles but applied
Oh,
differently?
sure. That's a great question. So, like, foundationally, the engineering principles are the same. We just, yeah, apply it on a different scale. Most houses are 2 or 3 stories, where commercial, could be 15 or 20, depending on where you're at.
And
The county I'm in, I think it maxes out at 5 stories.
yeah,
But yeah, the general principles are the same.
I saw something recently about um, it's residential, but it was a high rise,
Hmm.
and there was like a balance in the foundation. I think it was I think it was in China, but
Hmm.
basically for earthquakes. And is that
Yeah.
considered, are high rises considered the same as commercial or no?
Oh, sure. So, like a high rise apartment building like that would probably be zoned residential,
Mhm.
but built very much more like a
Like,
commercial
yeah,
office building,
yeah,
right? Like the infrastructure, let's say, for a building that's 20 stories high is very similar between residential and
and
commercial.
commercial.
It's kind of how you fit it out on the inside,
Yeah.
um, for sure. And yeah, so that type of we call that base isolation, kind
Mhm.
of where you're uncoupling the building from the ground,
Mhm.
is yeah, it's very common practice in that region of the world
Mhm.
for dealing with earthquakes, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hearing uncoupling from the ground doesn't sound reassuring, but I know it
Well,
is.
you think about it like springs on a bicycle or on your
Right.
car, right? So you're like everything's still structurally connected as you're driving down the road, but you are not feeling all of the potholes quite as much as if you didn't have springs.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a concept.
That's an amazing way to describe it. What actually constitutes a residential or a house? Like I remember when I think I was watching House Hunters, but
Hmm.
it was like a room has to have a closet, like a bedroom has to have a
Oh,
closet.
sure.
So what
Yeah.
actually constitutes a house?
That is a great question. And I almost feel like I want to phone a friend,
I
one of
was
my
going to say, is
architect
that more of an
friends.
architectural question or yeah, that's fine. That's totally
It
fine.
is. I believe, some of the elements are, so here's what I can tell you. Like when you are converting a garage into a residential space,
Mhm.
right? Like we build garages, even if they're part of your home and
Mhm.
not detached, we build them a little bit differently, right? Like they don't have to have the same um, amount of lighting that we want to have in a bedroom.
Mhm.
There's also this concept called egress, where if there's a hazardous situation like a fire or something like that, you need to be able to get out of your room in more than one way. So
Mhm.
you have a door and a window that is large enough that you can fit through it, right? And
Right.
so even if you had like a studio type ADU or apartment,
Mhm.
you would need to have that type of egress built in, where you wouldn't necessarily have to have that in a garage. So it's really common to build in some extra windows for lighting and ventilation that you wouldn't necessarily have in an uninhabited space like a garage.
Right.
Um, so that's part of it. We really try and take into consideration the fact that someone's going to be living in this space,
Right.
right? So safety and, yeah, lighting, ventilation, those are all big concerns that go into, yeah, is this a living space or a non-livable space?
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I've always been really curious about this. How do we know how much we can build on the land? Like, and I'm not talking about like
Hmm.
protected land, but so for instance,
Yeah.
I'm in South Florida
Yeah.
and we are still building in Miami right on the water. Like, and I'm always
Yeah.
just like, how do we know how much we can like how much weight can we put on the ground if that's and I know it depends on like
Yes,
what the soil or whatever like is the bedrock or
it
whatever.
absolutely does. Yeah.
But like how do we know that? Is that just a math
How do we
calculation
know that?
or
So there's a whole group of consultants that we often work with on a
Mhm.
project called geotechnical engineers, and their specialty is the soil
Gotcha.
and its structure, how the different types behave under different loading conditions. And so, like, especially if you are going to have a retaining wall on your project,
Mhm.
then we hire the services of a geotechnical engineer to come in, and they actually take samples of your soil, sometimes depending on the project, going down 15 or 20 or 50 feet. And, they bring up like a cylindrical core, and then they do their work of analyzing it. What type of soil is this? Where's the water table? There's a lot of factors that are involved in answering that exact question. How
Yeah.
much weight can this soil support? um, and it's different for different types of soil, and very often what you have like in the top 5 feet, you have something different right below that for the
Sure.
next 5 or 10, depending on where you're at. That can vary quite a bit. So yeah, we absolutely rely on their expertise
Yeah.
to give us input like that. When you first asked that question, what I thought of was how much can I build is also like on the lot that
Mhm.
your house is on, how
Yeah.
much can I build? And that you can definitely get in touch with your local building department, and they will help you understand things on your property like setbacks and easements. And so, setback is a rule that your city or county has decided for your neighborhood. You can only build so close to your property line. Sometimes that's 5 feet, sometimes that's 10, 15, 20. It depends on the situation of your particular lot. And an easement is similar, but it is more like if your development has a water drainage system. right? And maybe in your backyard, you've got this little Z-shaped concrete swale going back by your back fence. And
Mhm.
so now there's an easement in addition to whatever your setback is to your property line that says you can't build within 5 feet of that drainage system, you know.
Right.
So yeah, your local building department will be able to give you all of the particulars on your specific lot,
Yeah.
and then you can make decisions from there. Uh,
This is like so complex and complicated. And it actually, I'll ask this question later, just remind
yeah,
me, is
yeah,
it sounds like so much of your work is working with other people. So I'd love to hear more about that. But
yeah, absolutely.
how did you come to starting your own business and building it? No pun
That is a
intended.
great question. That is a great question. So I have been working in the engineering field since 1986. It's been a long time. I had a detour for a few years
Mhm.
when uh, the economy crashed in like 2008, 2009. No one
Mhm.
was building anything in our area for quite a few years because the banks weren't loaning any money.
Yeah.
So I took a little detour and did some non engineering work for a few years. And I really came to realize how much I missed it, right? Like at heart, I am a problem solver. I love puzzles. And like I just wasn't getting the, I guess, gratification out of the work that I was
Yeah.
doing at that moment. Like where I was at, I had fixed all of the problems that had come to me, right? Like,
Right.
so I realized how much I was missing it, and my kids were older, and it was like, well, I think it's time to get back into engineering.
Mhm.
And so I did that. When I first got out of school, I had my kids relatively young, and like getting your civil engineer's license is there's a lot of testing involved, and with young kids, it just didn't feel feasible for me, so I didn't get my license right away.
Mhm.
So when I went back into engineering, I worked for a firm that was really, really supportive of everyone who worked for them getting their PE license. And I really appreciate what a gift that was, right?
Yeah.
There, I had coworkers, I could pick their brains. They had so many resources in the form of books and stuff that studying for it was yeah, it was something I didn't take a course. There's a lot of courses out there. I self-studied because
Mhm.
I had such a wealth of resources. And that was amazing, right? So that push paid off, and I passed all of my exams and I got my
Yay.
license and worked for them for a few more years, and just realized maybe it wasn't a place where I could really grow my career the way that I wanted to,
Yeah.
as quickly as I wanted to, because I had taken a break. I was in my mid 40s
Mhm.
when I kind of came back into engineering, and I didn't feel like I could wait, 15 years for someone to decide to promote me to manager.
Right. Yeah, I get it. Totally.
And so I left the firm. At first, I did not have the intention of starting my own business, but then realized that it was kind of now or never. I had pursued a couple of positions with the county, but so civil engineering is a very broad field. It spans the gamut from what I do with residential and commercial buildings all the way through bridges and dams and roads and sewers, and there's so many things.
Yeah.
And so the positions at the county weren't tailored toward my expertise, even though my license would allow me to do those. And I realized it was kind of now or never,
Yeah.
right? Like my husband and I had vaguely talked through the years about, well, when I have my own firm, I'll do things this way. And it just felt like no, this is the time.
Yeah.
So I made that decision. In California, a structural engineering firm cannot be an LLC, which is
Mm.
relatively easy type of business
Yeah.
to form. And I didn't have any partners that I was starting this with, so I actually started a corporation, and I am the president, the treasurer, the secretary. I'm all the things. I own all the shares. So our annual meetings are super fun. I think my second year in, I installed my husband as my vice president. So then I could bring him to dinner at my annual meetings.
Nice.
And we can conduct business. So that has also been a really fun adventure. And one of the things I was really nervous about was the fact that while I'm a really fantastic engineer, I have never owned an engineering business before. And so I reached out to some other women in my life who own their businesses. I have a friend who has a law practice. I have a friend who does construction consulting. I have a friend who's a graphic designer. And so I picked their brains. Like, if
Yeah.
you were starting again today, what would you do? And one of them directed me toward a local organization here called the Women's Business Center.
Mhm.
And my understanding is that there are women's business centers all over the country. And they're there to support new business owners. And so I signed up as a client. Their services are either free or very low cost.
Mhm.
They get a lot of funding from the Small Business Administration and other organizations like really interested in helping small businesses succeed. And then I took every webinar that they offered.
It sounds so easy, like, "Oh, just start a business." But, like, you have all of this incredible experience in engineering. But like
Yeah.
you said, you're the president, you're the vice president, you're the secretary, you're the CEO, COO, CFO, like, all the
Yes.
Cs, like
I am the marketing department. I'm all of the
exactly,
things.
exactly, and
Yes.
so, it's like, "Oh, yeah, just start a business," and it's like, "Oh my god, I have to build a website." Like, it's not just, simple, so, of course, take all
Oh
the
my
webinars.
gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Oh my, even before you build a website, you have to choose a web address.
Yes, yeah,
I mean, could be 100 hours of thinking about that to
yeah.
begin with. And honestly, if I had to do it over again, I would choose a shorter one.
That's
But
really
at the
funny.
time, this felt amazing. So,
Yeah.
yes, build a website. What's really interesting is about a year and a half ago, my husband went out on his own too. He had been
Oh,
working
cool.
for um, uh, an agency, and it was time for him to launch his own thing. I paid attention to all of the engineers that I worked with and was friends with who talked to me about how much they loathed doing invoicing every
Yep.
month and all of that. And so I hired a bookkeeper right
Yeah,
off the bat. I knew enough about QuickBooks to know that I don't know the vocabulary and I don't want to mess it up,
yeah.
and decided I don't want to be an expert on that. And
Mhm.
then my husband started his business and decided he would be the bookkeeper. And so he comes to me in questions occasionally. I'm like, so I hired a bookkeeper, honey.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't
yeah.
want to know.
Exactly, I
I don't
don't
want
wanna
to be
know.
an expert in that. I'm an expert in so many other things. Like,
Yeah,
that's when I can easily hire out and
yeah.
delegate. So yeah, it is a lot starting your own business. And so not only did I take every webinar that the Women's Business Center offered, but they also had a program for new entrepreneurs they call it Explore Design Launch. Other organizations might have different names,
Mhm.
but it was amazing. It was very much foundational to, yeah, what type of business structure is right for you. Maybe a sole proprietorship works in your industry. Maybe you do need an LLC, exploring what's the best for the concept that you have. They talked about some marketing basics and things like, logos and colors and like just it was all very introductory
Mhm.
and also like covered all of the bases. And that was really key as well. Just to even be thinking about, who is my ideal client?
Right.
That is a really great question. Yeah, and it actually took me a while to refine that because even though I do a lot of residential work, homeowners are not my ideal clients.
Mm.
Um, Architects and contractors are my ideal clients because they're the ones who are already engaging with the homeowners,
Yeah, that
right?
makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Right. And so, but the conversations that I have are really different. And who I follow on Instagram is really different, for my
Right.
business
Right.
because of who my ideal client is. But also that got me around other people
Mhm.
who were starting their own business and excited about it and learning about it. And that was so important too, was to find that group of people that could relate to where I was at the
Mhm.
moment in my life journey. Because it's a really different place being an entrepreneur, especially an entrepreneur at 50.
Having a community is just so incredibly important. And like you're saying, your community was very technical, right? It's a very different skill set.
Yes,
So it's so nice
absolutely.
to have that support and for someone who's going through the same thing that you're going through.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So good. The other thing I got involved in is we have some really amazing networking groups here on the Central Coast. And pretty early on, I got invited to be a part of the Slow Women's Network. And that is also really instrumental. So once a month, we meet for lunch and doing some networking. And um, yeah, that's again putting yourself around people who are like in that same headspace as
Mhm.
you or in the headspace you want to grow into is so important. And I love being a part of that group. And now that I'm 3.5 years in to owning my own business, I'm not the shy newbie in the corner hoping no
Yeah.
one notices me.
Yeah.
I'm on the board and I'm out front talking to people. And one of the things I love is I joined that group because I knew I needed to get comfortable talking about myself and my
Mhm.
business. And it was such a great opportunity to do that. And it's a good opportunity for me to reinforce that because like I mentioned earlier, like I was that shy girl in the corner reading her book all the time in school. And yeah, it took me a long time to grow out of that. I remember being a young engineer, probably within that first year that I started working, sitting at my desk, like overhearing my boss talking to a client or something, and thinking, I will never own my own firm because
Right.
I'm going to have to go talk to people. Oh,
Right. Right.
so now, I go to networking events and confidently walk up to people and introduce myself and can talk to them about what I'm doing and, how can we support each other. So
Yeah.
I, the having my own business has been such an opportunity to invest in myself and my personal growth. And that is like, we could have a whole discussion just on that.
Yeah. That's incredible. And I love what you said about the timing of your life with it of like, you know what? Like if I'm gonna do it, I need to do it now, and
Yeah,
I think that's a really beautiful thing. And um it's interesting because when you're younger, sometimes you're like, oh, maybe I'll do that later, or I don't have enough experience, or, I think there's
right.
something really beautiful about your 40s and 50s where you're like, no, if I'm gonna do it, let's do it. And I
Yes.
I have enough life experience that I may not know what I'm doing, but I'll figure it out. Like it's
Yes.
it's a really, really nice, I love that you mentioned that. And
Oh, thank you.
it even sort of speaks to, you were saying it took, not it took, but you were a little bit longer in your undergraduate career, and that your licensure, you had a family, you had other things, and you did that a little bit later. And timing is always so important in our lives in
Yeah.
terms of, don't rush things, don't force things, but when the time is right, the time is right.
Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned something earlier in our conversation about, being a new entrepreneur. And I love that you're talking about the Women's Business Center and the networking groups. What else have you found to be really helpful for you?
A couple of things. One is books,
Yeah.
right? Like one of the things that I heard frequently enough as an excuse from people I worked for
Mhm.
when they made rough management decisions, like, maybe we could have handled that a little bit better.
Mhm.
The reasoning was, well, I went to engineering school, not business school, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, there is a wealth of information out there for free, through your library.
Yep.
Have a library card. I use this app called Libby. I have
Yes.
access to print and audio versions of books for free. I, there is no excuse for not being better at what you do, because
Hmm.
there is a wealth of information out there for free. Um, so yeah, being in learning, right?
Yeah.
Just being in learning mode. Um, I also have invested really heavily in coaching.
Hmm.
Knowing that yeah, like mentioned earlier, I am brand new to owning a business. I do not know what to do and have all of the answers. So I'm going to go find people who do.
Yeah.
And I have worked with some amazing coaches, both like privately and also in group sessions. They're both wonderful ways to up level yourself and your skills.
Yeah.
I'm also going to give a shout out to I call them my accountability buddies.
Love
I
it.
have a group that I meet with every Friday afternoon, and we set some personal goals and we set some business goals for the week. And we're there to support each other. And I love, love, love that group. And I would not have accomplished many of the things that I have without that. Um, so that has been such a key element to my success. And one of the things that I love about how we work together is we really want to see each other succeed. So, like, if you've had something on your list for 3 weeks straight and you haven't done it, we really help you, like, well, how can you be successful in this? You're not doing
Right.
it. So what's the blocker, right?
Right.
Like, was it too much? Right. So can we dial that down to, like, instead of every day I'm going to sit down and write in my gratitude journal, right? Like, maybe for the next week, just two times
Yeah.
is the goal,
Yeah.
or one time could be the goal, or maybe that's not the right goal right now.
Right.
Maybe you need to do something else instead. So I love that we are there to help craft success for each other, because the little successes add up to big successes over time. Another thing that I highly recommend that has been really helpful for me is bringing back a little play into my day. It is so easy for me to sit down and just, you got to put your head down and just power through it.
Right.
And I can do that
Hmm.
for maybe 2 or 3 days in a
Hmm.
row, and then I'm exhausted and I get too easily distracted and all of the things that are less productive. And I read this book, I believe it's called The Power of Having Fun by Dave Crenshaw. And it was really revolutionary about, you know what, give yourself permission to take some breaks throughout the day and go have fun. So for me, that looks like, I have a home office. So out in one of the other rooms, we've got a table, and maybe that's spending 10 minutes working on a puzzle
Yeah.
or building Legos because I
Yep.
still love to build Lego.
Heather,
Um,
this still feels like work.
I mean, but it's Star Wars
But it's
Lego.
fun. Yeah,
So,
exactly. I'm like,
it's,
yeah, it's the play part of how your brain works. I love
it
that.
is.
Um, I was just looking up a quote, something that you said reminded me of this, and I have to remind myself because I'm the same way. I will buckle down and just, get through stuff. But being consistent does not mean being constant. And
Ooh,
I love what you're saying about bringing play into it and even just thinking of things as play, right? Like sometimes it's like, oh,
yes.
this thing that I have to do for work, it's really fun for me. So like, let me do that when I need a break. Or I love that
Yes.
you have your Lego space and your puzzle space, and because it is related, right? I mean, you're still using your
Yeah,
brain in that way, but it's giving it a little bit of a break.
absolutely. Or just go for a walk for 10
Yes.
minutes.
Yeah.
Or I know one of the things that I learned about myself was before I started this entrepreneurial journey, I was really, really hard on myself, really hard on myself. And so, when I'm here on my own, running my own day every day, and the rails, so to speak, are off,
Right.
I had to-do list PTSD, right? Like I would load up a list of 30 things to jam into a weekend.
Mm.
And, there's no way that could possibly fit into 2 days,
Right.
even if I didn't sleep.
Right.
But then Sunday night, I'd be looking at my list. I'm like, oh my gosh, I only got 3 things done. I'm such a failure. So, yeah, now I'm here in charge of my own work and my home and all of the things. And so what do? I can't even like physically write a to-do list anymore
Mhm.
because I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not beating myself up. I'm not shaming myself up for just being human.
Yeah.
So um I, I give myself stickers when I get stuff done now.
Right.
I had to find a way to reconnect to some joy in my
Mhm.
life too, right? Like, yeah, my coach often repeats to me, just it's okay to not take it all so seriously. You're allowed to have some joy and some fun in your life, even though
Yeah.
you have all of this going on. It's
Yeah.
really okay. Yeah.
It's funny. I was talking to Savannah Hypes, and we were talking about sleep. But
Mm-hmm.
there's a reason I'm mentioning this. She was talking about, she deals with, she's a sleep therapist, and she deals especially with executives who are having issues with sleep.
Yeah.
And we just briefly mentioned like so much in the work world that is lauded and praised are actually really toxic behaviors and patterns, like,
Yes.
and so
Yes.
to be able to recognize that and to give yourself grace and also to say like, hey, this is my business, this is my company, and this is how I want to run it, is I say give yourself a lot of kudos for that, because
Thank you.
it's not how typically, what is shown in the media as like important, and that's actually
Yeah.
really important, right?
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
think sleeping at your office 7 days out of the week is really something we should be encouraging
Reward.
and saying like that's awesome. It's like, no, that's something's wrong. So
Agreed.
yeah, so I love
Agreed.
that, like, you
Yeah.
found that stickers are something that works for you, and it sounds silly,
Yeah.
but like, who cares? Like, it works for you. That's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah. But I kind of had to rediscover that. Like
Yeah.
I started that just a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
I was walking around Walmart. I'm like, stickers.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I need to do that. And
Yeah.
yeah, it just it gives me the positive reinforcement
Yeah.
that and the joy that like crossing something off of my to-do list used to do for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, finding my way back to yeah, joy and
That
being
joy.
excited about what
Yeah.
I'm doing and my life. Like I'm excited to get out of bed and go, oh, what do I get to do today?
Yeah.
Um Yeah, it has been quite the journey. And I agree with you. So I'm sure no one will be surprised by me saying that the world of structural engineering and engineering in general, all of the types are very male dominated,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that led me to one of my coaches was her business. She talked about the art of feminine business.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, that is calling to my heart because, I come from a fairly uh, small population county, right?
Mhm.
Like LA is a
Mhm.
giant city, San Francisco is a giant city. We have a
Right.
lot of agriculture, right, in
Right.
San Luis Obispo County. And there's a very strong old boys club in the construction world. And I'm like, I'm not an old boy. I can't do my business that way. I can't. So, yeah, so I have learned about things like how am I going to run my business differently in a way that works for me as a person.
Yeah.
And yeah, it has been quite the journey and I'm still on it.
Sure.
Every 6 or 8 months or so, I find that I have to change like how I'm interacting with my calendar
Mhm.
or how I'm interacting with, the to-do lists and the tasks. Um, and what do I need to tweak? Just and so again, it's great to have resources like
Yeah.
coaching and a support group that you can reach out to go, hey, this isn't working for me. How do you do that?
Right.
How do you interact with your calendar? What are you, paper? Are you electronic? Are you a hybrid? Like
Right.
what works for you? And just find a way to do it a little differently.
Yeah.
So that's also been part of my journey is learning that experimenting is okay.
Mhm.
I don't have to have the only right way to do something the first time I try it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I I think the other thing that's at least been interesting to me with the podcast in particular is I'll be doing something and I'm like, "No, you have to do it this way." And I'm like, "Why?" Like, "You can do whatever you want. It's
Yes.
yours. Like, you can do whatever
Right.
you want with this." And it's incredible how we have limits on ourselves or limits on what we're doing, and you're like, "Wait, where did that come from?" So it's nice to
Oh, yeah.
have other people around you as well to be like, "Hey, how do you do this?" Or, "Am I thinking about this the right way?" Or, "No, the way I'm doing it
Yes.
really is right." Um, and
Yeah.
even just to hear other people, one of my dear friends, uh, for her business does a lot on social media, and she's like, "God, I
Mhm.
always feel so stupid." And I was like, "Oh my God, I always feel so stupid." I was like, "But your stuff is so good." And just to hear other people talk about
Mhm.
reality of how they're even just feeling, almost to what you were saying about like
Yeah.
a feminine business model, not that men don't have feelings, but like, it's just nice to be able
Yeah.
to communicate in that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's something I'm trying to bring back to the workforce.
Yeah.
Like we all have emotions,
Yeah.
and sometimes they do belong in a business setting.
Yeah.
You can be disappointed, you can
Yeah.
be frustrated, you can be sad. Um, yeah, you can also be ecstatic and excited and
Yeah.
like all of the good emotions too.
Yeah.
All of it's welcome because we're all people. And so I'm trying to live that out as
Yeah.
well and allow myself to feel frustrated or excited or
Yeah.
relieved or all of the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All of it. It's um again, I feel like oftentimes we shut down the human, that
Yeah.
human part of ourselves. And as someone who's been a manager, I will say the caveat is I try and bring that in. I try and think about, people have 5 things going on in their life you know nothing about. And
Yeah.
that's coming to work with them. And you don't know what it is, and they don't
Yeah.
ever have to tell
Yeah.
you. And on the flip
Mhm.
side, sometimes I'm like, enough feeling. So I know it's a balance. I'm like, okay, let's just do the work. So it's tough, and it's
Yes.
nice,
Oh,
to your point, it's nice
absolutely.
to have a community to be able to figure it out with other people. Um,
Yes. Yes.
so, you know, you talked about working with so many different types of people. And,
Yeah.
there's the architects, there's the construction crew, there's
Yeah.
I wrote it down, the geotechnical engineers, there's all these
Yeah.
different people that you work with.
Mhm.
What are the skills that you've built over the years to be able to manage so
Oh,
many projects and people?
sure. So really, I learned a lot of people skills in the jobs that I had when I was in high school and college. And not so much my high school jobs, but my college jobs had a lot of customer interaction. Like I worked at a local bookstore. That was really key, because they were like, so the culture here is that when somebody walks in the door, you say hi and you welcome them. I was
Right.
like, I have to be the first one to talk. Oh gosh. But it got me over that, you know, resistance that my natural shyness had instilled in me. That, yeah, it is safe to be the one to start a conversation with someone.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think, um, gave me a great foundation, right, for being able to communicate with all of the parties involved on any particular project. Um, and it's really interesting, with some of the firms that I worked at, you could tell like some of the young people who were just maybe still in school or just graduating, if this was their very first job ever,
Mhm.
right? You're not comfortable talking to people. Um, so that definitely helped me.
Mhm.
Um, some of it is just, on projects that I've had over the years. If there was a more senior engineer on the project with me, copying me in on an email so I could see the language they used in talking to the architect or the contractor or the geotechnical engineer or any of the other consultants. How do you talk to someone about this?
Right.
Um, Honestly, sometimes I have my husband
Yeah.
take a look at an email for me before I send it out because for right or for wrong, I don't know how accurate this thought process is, but over the years, I have developed this story that I tell myself that, especially because I'm a woman in this industry, I have to word my emails very carefully in a very particular and very technical fashion to
Mhm.
be taken seriously. I don't know if that's just a story that I told myself and
Mhm.
that's not true, or if it is true, but yeah, I tend to get very technical in my writing and emotionally detached. And
Mhm.
so my husband will come in and take a look at that and go, well, here's how I would say that. And
Right.
it's like, oh, that's so friendly and approachable.
Right. Right.
So having resources like that also to, check my language,
Yeah.
I can actually be more friendly and familiar with people and still be taken seriously.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a learning process there too, but definitely having to have had some customer interaction in my career detour where I wasn't doing engineering. I actually worked in the front office for a local Jewish synagogue,
Mhm.
and so I was the one answering the phones and welcoming people when they entered the building.
Yeah.
And, so that type of thing also gave me a lot of comfort in interacting with people and
Yeah.
building those skills in, having conversations and dealing with things. So, yeah, and they don't teach you interaction skills very well
No.
in college at all.
No.
Um, so it has been through experiences like that. And also, over the years, I have volunteered a lot. Like my kids were in scouting. And so I was really involved in that, like from being a den leader to being on the parent committee to like like in a local leadership position as well. And so just when my kids were in high school and in theater, I was involved in the parent group who
Yeah.
like sold the tickets and ran the concession stand and ran the volunteer crew for sets and all of that. So it's just, you gain skills along the way
Yeah.
doing life,
Yeah.
there's that too. But you kind of have to go out there and do life as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. And I love all the examples that you're giving because I think so many times we do get so into the like very technical, very formal, and it's like you're a whole person. So you're bringing all of that to the
Yes.
table, you know, and it could be the PTA, it could be, that I
Yes.
actually think working in a restaurant should be national service. I think you learn a lot from it, like retailer or restaurant. But like all of
Yes.
that
Yes.
stuff, you have more experience than I think we give ourselves credit for. So I love all these different examples that you're giving.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you just have to lean into it. And it's like, I'm not comfortable doing this. And as long as
Yes.
it's safe, yeah, obviously that's a different situation. But it's like
Right.
networking, I'm someone who could talk to a wall, but
Uh-huh.
networking is sometimes I have to hype myself up. It's like, okay, and this like go in, it's going to be fine. Like, because
Mhm.
sometimes it's like an energy drain and that
Yes.
surprises people. But it's one of those things where it's like, just know yourself, lean into it, lean into what you need. I
Absolutely.
love the sticker idea. I may give myself a sticker after a networking event or a
100%.
lollipop, like the dum dum you get
Yes.
from the doctor's office. Like you did it,
Oh,
you can grab a
yeah.
dum dum. But like,
Absolutely.
it's one of those things that you're like, it's gonna be fine, just go do it. Like,
Yes,
so
absolutely. I also like networking can be very scary,
yeah.
right? And I had this concept of the few networking events that I had attended before owning my own business,
Mhm.
where there's 100 people in the room and you got to go, hand everybody a business card
Right.
and have all these conversations. And oh my gosh, that is so much. And what I have done to find success in networking is I really had to reframe that. Right. So not only do I sit in my car and do like a 4-minute grounding meditation
Mhm.
before I walk into an event, because I realize I need that for myself.
Right.
But I make my goal, I'm going to say hi to one person
Mhm.
and have a conversation with one person I haven't met yet.
Right.
That's my goal. Even if there are 100 people in the room,
Right.
my goal is to say hello to one person. I don't even have to give them a business card,
Right.
right? It's the fact that I'm out here and being here. Um, that's the goal,
Right.
right? Because sometimes halfway to the event, you're like, I should just go home and put on the PJs and it's ice cream time, right?
Right.
What am I even doing? And so, yeah, I have had to, in a number of ways, I've had to reframe what is success for me,
Yeah.
right? So when it comes to networking, that's success for me.
Yeah.
Sometimes, other times it's different, right? I'm in a
Sure.
different headspace, I have
Sure.
different goals, it's all good. Um, but like I had to reframe success as I deliver a project during normal business
Yeah.
hours because I had gotten into a place where I would be up until 2 in the
Yep.
morning and then I'm just basically worthless for the next 2 days. I'm like, this is not sustainable.
Yeah.
Um, so I had to, yeah, reframe that for myself. And it's not to say, even recently, I stayed up. It was only until midnight. It was much better,
Yeah.
but also I don't, mentally strong arm myself into being in that position all the time. I have learned that it's okay to renegotiate. You know
Yeah.
what? If I had a migraine, it is okay to tell my clients, you know
Yeah.
what? I was out sick and I will deliver the project as soon as I can.
Yeah.
That is okay. That is another part of being human.
Yeah.
Not every day is 100% productivity day,
Yeah. Absolutely.
and it needs to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And it's when it's, the exception to the rule, it's completely fine because we get
Yeah,
sick and and sometimes we have to stay up until midnight to get stuff done. But I feel like if
absolutely.
you, like you said before, like if you give yourself that grace of like, yeah, this is just life. Like
Yes,
it's gonna happen, and as long as it doesn't become a pattern that you're not happy with. So
exactly. Yeah.
so what is something that you wish homeowners knew that maybe
Mm,
they don't when they come to you, or when by the time you get to them?
interesting. Oh, like when you're thinking about adding on to your house or something like that?
Yeah, like if you're gonna build a house or adding on to your house or
Yeah.
redesign or something, like what's something that you feel like you wish people knew,
Okay.
or maybe even earlier in the process, what you wish they knew?
Absolutely. God, there's so many things. I'm trying to narrow it down to one. I think one thing I would like them to know is that adding on to your house or building an ADU or something like that, it will probably take more money and more time than you think it will.
Mhm.
And just know that going in.
Yeah,
Um, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Whether that's asking your neighbors, hey, do you know a good architect? Do you know a good contractor? What was your experience like when you redid your kitchen?
mhm,
Um, and expect to spend a little money up front to see if your project is even feasible.
yeah,
That is another thing I would like them to know. Don't let that scare you off of your
mhm,
project, but be prepared for it. I recently attended an informational session for homeowners all about ADUs, right? It's the way that we're building density in our residential areas with a little less impact than, say, building a 200 unit apartment
right,
building. And that was one of the things that they talked about. And I really appreciated that because you do need to know things like uh, where does your water connect to the city service? Where does
right,
your sewer connect? Um, Gosh, is your electrical panel, does it have enough capacity to add on another bedroom or two?
right,
Like you need to hire an expert to find that out for you.
yeah,
Not that you couldn't learn how to do that on YouTube.
mhm,
You could, but be prepared to spend a little bit to have some experts give you some guidance and know if your project is feasible before you start investing in things like an architect and an engineer and your soils report. You
yeah,
know, um, just be prepared for that. That could range from $500 to maybe 4,000, right?
mhm,
Like if your electrical panel needs to be upgraded.
right.
So, yeah, just be prepared for that. It's, don't believe everything you see on the home improvement shows. They have huge crews of people and
Wait, you can't renovate a
lots of
whole
footage.
house in
It
24 hours?
amazingly, I mean, if you have enough money and people working on it,
Sure.
maybe.
Yeah. It makes for
um,
great television, but
it really does make for great television. I agree. But also, like many things in the world of media these days, it gives you this false expectation
totally,
for the effort that is involved in
totally.
doing a home project. Whether that is painting your room or, yeah, adding on a bedroom and a bathroom so you can have a home office, right?
Yeah,
Like it's all bigger than you think it is.
yeah. Well, even just it's funny, even just you talking about, like, sewer and electric and water, and I'm like, "Yeah, that stuff just works," like, you don't think
Yes,
about it, like, it just works, so we
it
don't have to think
does.
about it, and you're like, "Oh, yeah," like, what?
Yeah, you do have to have a little bit more understanding of it as you're
Yeah,
embarking on a project like this. It's
yeah,
really helpful.
yeah,
And the more that you and your design team can think things through before you start building,
mhm,
the better your project is going to go.
yeah,
That whole measure twice, cut once, like that goes to your design process as well. Like really know what your vision is before you sit down with your architect.
Mhm.
They'll help you bring it to life,
Right.
but have a clear understanding of what it is that you're trying to accomplish, um, and what your budget is for the entire project. You might want to, add 3 bedrooms and a bathroom to your house, but you have the budget to add one.
Right.
So, like, yeah, to understand the scope of your project and, um, yeah, what your general budget is ahead of time. And,
And
yeah,
then
like,
add to it.
yes, and add
Yeah.
to it
Yeah.
because it will cost more.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But that's true of,
Most
when
things
I
in life,
when
like,
I have a craft project I want to do, and all
yeah.
of a sudden it's like, oh gosh, I thought I was going into Michael's for 3 things,
Yeah.
and it turns out, wow, I needed 10.
Yeah,
Oh dear.
exactly. Exactly. Turns out I need to tie-dye something this weekend.
100%, and it
Yeah.
was on sale, so
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah, it would be foolish not to. So, before
Yes.
I ask you the 3 questions I ask everyone, do you
Yeah.
have, like, a favorite like, from a structural perspective, do you have, like, a
Yeah.
favorite piece of architecture that you just are like, "This is so cool?"
Oh gosh. I have so many. I will
Mhm.
say this, like, my style that I love is I love to see the structure.
Mm.
So, like, I believe it is the Hancock Building in Chicago,
Mhm.
where, it's a high rise and you see the columns and the X braces, crisscrossing
Yeah.
down or up the height of the building. Seeing that structure, it warms my heart. Or
Yeah.
like going into a restaurant or something and you look up and you can see the trusses
Mhm.
in the roof, like especially if it's an old building with beautiful wood.
Yeah.
Just love it. Yeah, like being able to see it.
That's
It's
cool.
almost like, yeah, so it's not a particular like, ooh, I love the Bauhaus style or
Right.
something like that. It's like, no, I want to see what's holding that up.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that tracks. That makes total sense.
Yes.
So I will ask you 3 questions that I ask everybody. And the
Yeah.
first question is, what advice would you give to your younger self? Or what advice would you give to someone who is interested in getting involved in this industry?
Sure. I would say it is safe to talk to people.
Yeah.
I know earlier you said you had a bunch of stupid questions. There are no stupid questions, right? The stupid ones are the ones you don't ask someone.
Yeah.
So I would say, yeah, ask more questions. To college, Heather, I would say talk to your professors more, go to more office hours.
Yeah.
They want to help you. So take advantage of that. Yes, it is okay to talk to people. That's what I would say.
That's great. Um, it's funny. I appreciate you saying there's no dumb questions. It is funny when you start actually thinking about things, like in prepping for this conversation, I was like, what is engineering? Like, like we hear these words all the time, and I'm like, what does it actually mean? Like, we just
Oh,
walk around the world just being like, think like we know what's going on. And I'm like, how
absolutely.
does the internet work? Like, I don't get it. I don't get any of it. But that's why I have this podcast. I can talk to people who know how things work.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah. And then what do you love most about what you do?
Oh my goodness. What I love the most is how much joy it brings to my homeowners to see their vision come true. And last summer, I had a project under construction with a family who, a few years ago, they built out a 2-story structure that they had been living in, right? And I think when they started, maybe they didn't have kids or had one kid. And they always knew they were going to add on like the main house. And it was time to do that, right? Their family had grown and they had things in place where this is the time. And um, so I, had been working with them through the design process and getting their permit, and now we're under construction. And it's an amazing home. Like, you walk in the front door and you go through the entry, and then it opens up into this wonderful, great room with huge vaulted ceilings. And it's stunning. And
Mhm.
even when it was just framing, right? And there wasn't any drywall on the walls, it wasn't painted, nothing like that. Just walking in, I was there with the homeowner one day, and just the overwhelming joy that he and his wife felt when they walked in, even in that stage, to have their dream come true, for having this beautiful home to support their growing family. Like, that brings me so much joy to be a part of that.
Yeah,
So yeah.
that's pretty special. That's very
It
cool.
is. It really is.
And then how can people find you?
Alrighty. So you can find me at my website. It is wethingtonengineering.com. Which, like, I think I said before you recorded, like, if I had to choose a web address again, I would go shorter. Um, Mostly because my last name is really long.
Yeah.
You say it exactly the way that it's spelled, but it's long. And then I am also on Instagram and LinkedIn,
Mhm.
and you could find me there under Wethington Engineering Inc. or Heather Wethington. Um, yeah, that's how you can find me. Or you can find me third Wednesday of the month at the Slow Women's Network
I love
lunch
that.
meetings.
I love that. That's awesome. Very cool. And we'll have all your information on the website and in the show notes. Thank you for
Wonderful.
spending so much time with me. This is such a fun conversation. I am frankly shocked that you brought up not liking to talk, or that was a skill you needed to learn, because I feel like I could talk to you all day. So
Well, thank you.
I had a lot
I
of fun. Thank you
appreciate
so
that.
much.
Thank you, Megan.
Thanks for listening to Wait, What Do You Do Again? For more information about today's guest, or if you'd like to be on the show, please visit megdeford.com. See you next time.